Hello everybody. So you guys seem to have really enjoyed the last video where I went over a couple of my favourite survivor interactions. So much so that you've all given me more than enough material for a part 2. Today we're going to be looking at even more interactions between the survivors. Which ones like each other, which ones dislike each other, and which ones really like each other. All in thanks to the comments you left on the last video, as well as all of you guys in the Discord. If you want to force me to make a part 3, then you know what to do. Enough preamble though. Let's start in no discernible order by going over some characters I didn't bring any attention to last time. And who better to start with than Wartox, the silliest little imp who has no tethers to this mortal plane and can also drain the life force from anything he pleases. It sounds pretty scary, no? Well, you'd be glad to know that Wartox goes out of his way to reassure the younger survivors that no, he indeed won't be draining their souls after they end up as a spirit. This is noteworthy since with all the other adult survivors, Wartox will indeed joke about eating their souls. He just doesn't want to scare the kids, bless him. Speaking of Wartox and the little ones though, if he is to inspect the candy cane, you can see that the kids make an effort to hang them from Wartox's horns. How sweet is that? I bet he teaches the kids, and Willow, some pranks of his own to help bring a little bit of light-hearted chaos to the camp. Though saying that, he will still prank the kids himself by replacing the stuffing in the stuffed pepper poppers with toothpaste, much to Walter's chagrin. Wait, how did he even get the toothpaste dimension, gotcha. I could talk about this guy and how I bet him and Willow orchestrated some killer pranks against Maxwell all day, but I'll save that for his dedicated video. To wrap up for now though, I'll mention how he seems to acknowledge that Wes's balloon-mancy isn't just show, and there may be some actual power behind his madness. That, or he's just humouring him. Which segues us perfectly onto the next survivor I didn't give much attention last time. Wes. I mean, could you blame me? There's not much to go off since his quotes are this, but that doesn't mean we can't check other survivors' quotes regarding him. Like how he mimics riding a unicycle whenever Willow messes with the egg beater, or how, according to Wilson, these second-hand dentures have become Wes's favourite prop. No matter the circumstances of Wes arriving here, he still takes it upon himself to keep the other survivors happy and entertained, even if he himself is incredibly unfortunate. How very considerate and caring of him. He even dreams about rescuing Wilson in that one animated short. But of course we can't talk about interactions in Wes without talking about them. Now it's well established that Wes displeased Maxwell by accidentally taking Witherstone's place in the Constant, so much so that in Adventure Mode you can see Wes trapped in a prison of Maxwell's design. But that was donkeys years ago, back before Maxwell became a regular old survivor like everybody else. After all this time, does Maxwell still hold an air of resentment towards the mine? Probably, but he holds an air of resentment towards everybody. But what about Wes? Well, if we look at the description for one of his vignettes, we can see that despite trapping him in an eternal realm of torment and suffering, he holds not a single grudge towards Maxwell, though does still give him the silent treatment, haha. I could see these two eventually opening up and getting along, like deep down Maxwell feels these pangs of guilt, but they are washed out with comfort whenever Wes does his hardest to even make him smile. Under Maxwell's callous exterior, the William Carter we once knew is happy that even somebody like Wes, somebody he imprisoned and resented for so long, could forgive them. I think I love Wes, this guy is beyond sweet. Phew, dwelled on that for a bit longer than I expected. How about we briefly mention something about Maxwell whilst we have him on the stage? An important detail I think that really sums up the kind of guy Maxwell may be nowadays is that he refers to WX78 by using the gender-neutral honorific of Mix, or MX. Despite everything Maxwell may be, taking people from their families and homes, forcing them as pawns to some sick twisted game for cosmic entities we don't even fully understand yet, he's not a bigot, and makes sure to use the correct terms for WX, which is honestly incredibly progressive when you consider how old Maxwell is and when the game takes place. Cost him nothing to do that, and went out of his way to look up an honorific not many people knew about existed just to make sure WX78 feels welcome. Also, the honorific wasn't widely used until the 1970s, so I headcanon that Maxwell invented it. But we spoke about Maxwell enough in the last video, which makes total sense considering he is one of the most important characters in the story. Anyway, Wickerbottom. She also got plenty of attention in the last video, but by Jove does she deserve more. and one I cannot believe I forgot to bring attention to was her interaction with Willow. So if you know a bit about Don't Starve Together's lore, then you definitely know that Willow was responsible for the burning of Wickerbottom's library. But as you may expect, neither of them know this. Or do they? If Willow is to interact with Wickerbottom's bookcase, she'll subtly ask her which library she used to work at. There's no way it was the same library she burned down, was it? In her words, let's not worry about it. The idea that Willow and Wickerbottom get along amicably despite what happened in the past is kinda bittersweet in a way. If they ever find out what happened, I feel like they'd both be heartbroken. Despite all that though, Willow does make sure to joke about Wickerbottom's age when she kicks it. Never change, Willow. I know I mentioned this in the last video that Wickerbottom was caring and supportive to the kids, but what I forgot to mention is that she's caring and supportive to everybody. Just look at how uplifting she is to reviving survivors, or how she makes sure to remind Wolfgang not to overexert himself when working out. Which in turn has Wolfgang remark that he'll protect Wickerbottom's bookcase specifically because it makes her happy. But if the bookcase was to somehow end up burnt, Wolfgang will even say he'll help her build another one. I can't let these survivors do, they are all too cute. No more Wickerbottom though, for now. How about we look at our favourite anxious little guy, Wiley. He mentions that he'll never pull off the battle helm like Wigfrid does, but more platonically than Willow does of course, but also how the veggie burger might help convince Wigfrid to eat her vegetables. I like to think that this guy obviously cares about all of the survivors' dietary needs, and is a tiny bit concerned about Wigfrid's meat-only diet. But not Wirt's plant-only diet. That's like being concerned that a cow only eats grass. That's just how merms work. Speaking of monster children, he does call Weber a petit monsieur, pardon my French, which doesn't stand for little monster, but little gentleman, or sir. In fact, whilst I was looking this up, I did notice that he's formal to everybody in his introductions. Except for Wartox, who he calls his, and I quote, fuzzy red friend. Let's give Wanda some attention. We didn't give her any in the last episode because I always suspected her to be a character that talks entirely in gimmick. But that's only half the truth, as I was able to find a few somethings. For instance, she really enjoys Woody's craft work with his idols, finding them fun and lovable. Wanda herself is said to be a big fan of collecting trinkets, so it ties nicely I think. I'm just imagining Woody carving Wanda some odd trinkets every now and then as a little gift to her. Preferably the idols that don't turn you into a monster or summon a sentient tree, I'd hope. Speaking of little trinkets and such, whilst not strictly a character interaction, she enjoys the Christmas ornaments as little keepsakes for all her memories they brought here. However, if she's to inspect the ornaments for the Forge bosses, she remarks that she must have missed them, which she indeed did, since she came out after the last time the Forge was run. Despite this, she, as well as most other characters that came out after the Forge and Gorge, have interaction quotes for almost everything found in those events. It's a bit odd that they'd go to the length of doing that. Probably just future-proofing in the off chance they bring it back. Hopefully. Please. To wrap up Wanda's segment, we all know that she's a time traveller and has seen most outcomes of the Constant, but she does give us some insight into some specifics. My favourite being how if she is to inspect Wirt's Mudslingers, she refers to the Dark Merm Kingdom timeline and the Enlightened one separately, but only says we're doomed for the Enlightened timeline. What does she mean by this? Does Alter somehow get to full power and take over the Constant, then the world? Or does Wirt usurp Alter themselves and harness their magic power fully, bringing forth eras of torment? I knew the Lunar side was trouble. Shadow Magic Merm Gang for life. Or she just doesn't say we're doomed for the Shadow timeline since it fails. But I don't want to think about that. When was the last time a civilization failed due to an overuse of Shadow Magic? Oh. Speaking of Wanda and her love for trinkets and baubles made by Woody, let's look at some of Woody's interactions. We did mention in the last video how he promised to give Wendy a piggyback ride as a werebeaver, but he also suggests Lucy to read off ingredients whilst he cooks. Do interactions between Woody and his ex-wife count for this video? I just imagine her propped up on a chair next to the crock pot with a little book open in front of her, much to Wiley's dismay. Of course, with Woody being the master at chopping trees, you'd probably expect him and Wormwood to not get along too well. Wrong. Woody is a sweet guy and even calls Wormwood his budding bud. Despite this though, Wormwood does have to warn Woody to keep Lucy away from him, and isn't too pleased with his beaver wear form. Totally okay with the moose and goose one though, however. Must be hard for Woody to want to chop trees and deforest the entire continent, but he's also got to deal with possibly upsetting the little green guy's heart. Well, when you think about it, it's more of a mutually beneficial agreement. Woody chops down trees so Wormwood can plant even more. The natural order. Do they get along? Probably. But lastly, let's look at an interaction I missed between Weber and Wendy. I gave these two whippersnappers attention in the last video, but an interaction I absolutely have to share is how Weber's quote for the Cutlass is him asking if anybody wants to play pirates, but Wendy's? Her quote is her saying that very well, they can indeed play pirates. And I love that. It makes me feel that Wendy is slowly opening up with her time spent with Weber and the other survivors. I like to think that's why she was a lot more emotive in the last animated short. Look, she's smiling! Clay, what is this witchcraft? It's a topic I really want to talk about. How the characters have grown and adapted over time. Like how Wickerbottom started out as this cranky, schno-talking librarian, but as she spent time here, with all the other survivors, she probably grew out of her crabby shell a little bit. I'd really like to talk about that with all of the survivors, if you'd like. I think it's time I really ought to do deep dive videos on specific survivors as well, since I have so much to talk about with each and every one of them. Do let me know if you want to see that though. In fact, let me know who you'd like me to talk about first. Willow? Wilson? Wes? Somehow? Leave a comment down below or bombard me with requests on the Discord. I appreciate them all the same. But I'll leave you with one last interaction. According to War Talks, Wormwood keeps making poop jokes, which is apparently too much for him. Honestly didn't know Wormwood was capable of making jokes, but I like to think that's War Talks rubbing off on him a little bit. That is all. But that's a good place to wrap up this video for now. Thank you all so much for watching, and especially those that helped me find interactions that I missed, and I do apologise if I missed even more. Those will be in a potential part 3. But for now, take care everybody and have a lovely day. Bye bye.